meeting for the GMU. We do them regularly. We were refreshing on grant recons. When you record a meeting on Teams, if you're not familiar with the Teams platform, you get to choose what language everyone is speaking, and I was so tempted to use Spanish just for fun. So, and I am on Cinco de Mayo, I sent out an update on the subaward progress for FY26, and I sent the entire thing in Spanish to all of our directors just for fun. And so I was tempted to do that for fun as well. So welcome to our quarterly subrecipient meeting for the month of October. We're going to do a little bit of a flexible agenda today. I will go ahead and suspend Robert's Rules of Order, and we don't need an motion to accept that. And we'll just jump straight into the agenda. Mostly it's in order, but we're going to talk about federal funding due to the federal government shutdown at the end instead of at the beginning. I will note that, I can find my mouse again. The purpose of the quarterly subrecipient meetings, we've got 168 people in the Teams room today, with extreme gratitude to all of you for your patience in the tech issues with the audio this morning. Yesterday I was able to use my phone as audio. This morning in our prior all NDE meeting, it wasn't working, which threw a panic this morning when it was time to figure out how to host the meeting today. So the purpose of our quarterly subrecipient meetings is really focused on our subrecipient partners. And less so on NDE staff. We do invite our NDE staff, of course, in the effort of good communication and collaboration to make sure our NDE staff members and partners are in the loop on the same information we're providing to our subrecipient colleagues. But the focus really is to provide updates and information from the grants management unit to our subrecipient partners on what's going on in the world of our grants. And then we do solicit input from all of our subrecipient partners in advance of the quarterly subrecipient meeting. So 2 or 3 weeks before the meeting, I send out a survey. It is embedded in the meeting invite. It's embedded, it goes out via an email. There's a QR code, there's a link. You can send an email if you're asking for an update. We try to make it as easy as possible to request those items, updates, and we say, what is it you need from us in terms of updates? And I've fully expected an onslaught of requests for this October meeting, and I only had 4. One of you responded, and there are 5 buckets to say, like, what do you need? And the question is the same. Do you have any agenda item requests or questions? And this person took the time to say, not at this time, 5 times. And I was so grateful that they took the time to say, we're good, 5 times. And I was like, this is comforting. Actually, I'll accept that feedback. Another person had a question that I was able to answer via email because they sent it that way as well. Another question that wasn't actually for grants, it was specific to a contract, so I was able to pass that off. And then the final question was the one that I expected about 47 responses on, which we absolutely will cover, which is update on the FY26 rollout of Rev Zero subawards. So we will be covering that for sure. And then the focus of the quarterly meetings is really on sort of that global perspective, 60,000 foot view. We do host on demand at this point. Initially, when we were doing this 3.5 years ago, we were hosting monthly office hours on a regular basis on topic specific content. So we would do a deep dive on RFRs, a deep dive on FFRs, a deep dive on the chart of accounts and those kinds of things. And so we will be talking at the very end of our time together about the next upcoming office hour, which will be on indirect cost rates. And I have a question for all of you when we get to that point in terms of scheduling and what would be most convenient for your schedules. I have some content prepared, and then we'll stop and have some slides where we'll sort of stop and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have. I do have the chat open. I'll try to grab those as we go along, but if when we get to those slides where it talks about discussion or feedback, I'll go back through the chat to make sure I didn't miss anything. You also have an opportunity at that point to raise your hand, come off mic if you mute if you would like to ask that in person. So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed. And I want to just give you a little bit of a semi-soft trigger warning. This next little bit, when I was preparing the content and the slides for today's time together, it was a little bit traumatizing for me because we're going to review the calendar year 25 to date. And as I was putting the content together, I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been in this role, believe it or not, for um, over 3.5 years. I've been with the department for 10 years. I have never had a year like this year. And I think when I say that, I've never had a year like this year in a single month that I've been in the agency. And we're in month 10, 9.5 at this point. So just as we go through these next slides, I think it's important to remember what we're going to talk about is a postmortem of 2025, but in real time, in real life, IRL, as we go through it and just kind of review together what this year has been like for all of us. And this, I want to just level set on. This is from the perspective of the Department of Education, from NDE. So when I talk about this is what we've been going through. And I know that you all have been going through your own piles of difficulty, is the nice way to say that. The difficulty that comes with each of these sort of blows that has come on a monthly basis as we go through this. So this is our version of the postmortem, knowing and recognizing that each of your organizations has had your own version on the other side. So a lot of times I was thinking about this yesterday as I was sort of putting final touches on and preparing. Almost like if you have the front line, the forward facing, the public facing, the actual student and educator safe facing sides, and if we're out fighting sort of the public.
Amber, we lost you.
Amber, you're muted.
You're just, yeah, you're just muted.
It shows you're unmuted now. Oops, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I'm gonna try really hard not to touch the buttons. That's gonna be hard for me. I move around a lot when I talk. So I'm gonna pretend like I'm back in church. I'm gonna do this. Try not to touch the things. So what I was saying is that we're all fighting the different fronts of the battles, the challenges that we faced in 2025. So this is in no way to say that like we've had it harder than anybody else. This is to say collectively we've all had a rough year. And so just as a little bit of a postmortem, we actually started, believe it or not, planning for the rollout of FY26 in December. Met with directors in the middle of December, and we started working on the master grants timeline. That is a coordination of 310, over 310 subaward agreements that across roughly those start the opening of funding applications in ePage started the first week of February, and we try to get those done by the end of June. That's about 150 calendar days, but that's 105 business days. So if we were doing it on an average, daily basis, that would assume we were approving 3 subawards per day, per business day. Also in December, you may remember that we had a major upgrade to the state's payment processing system, which continued, and as it continues, to impact state agencies. And that's something you may not have realized because you just knew that we were trying to get your RFRs in and paid, and then there was this massive lapse that we probably couldn't get you your RFRs. From a fiscal perspective, grant reconciliation and budget account reconciliation process perspective, from our perspective, we continued to have issues with draws. For example, there were additional steps added that were impacting our draws, and especially the amount of timing that it took for us to draw in federal funds, which impacted our ability to pay RFRs because we can't go into the negative. It creates a really weird relationship between being able to pay, for example, some of our very large RFRs, looking at you, Clark County School District, and we have policy requirements that don't let us pay very large RFRs, again, looking at you, Clark County School District, without notices to the controller's office because they impact the state's cash on hand, and investments and transfers have to be made and those kinds of things. So there's a bunch of sort of ducks that have to be put in rows. And ducks are very hard to put in rows. I don't know if you've tried. So and then in January, it was interesting. When I go to create these PowerPoints, I always go back to the most previous one and kind of look. And you guys, the first thing I saw, do you remember this OMB memo that came out to fund? And I was like, like, like trauma response. We were in the middle of it. And then we, like, the morning of the quarterly subrecipient meeting in January, I was like amending the slides as we went, like right in advance. And then between the time that we published that we held the quarterly subrecipient meeting and I sent you the slide deck, I had to add additional slides, right? That's how quickly the information was changing. And the same thing that happens here, certain happens with all of you, where it was the first request was, how deep are we vulnerable? What an analysis of how much is this going to impact us on a fiscal level. So the reports and the analyses. We also get to do all the legal responses and the media requests. We're answering questions for the AG's office and other people. And then eventually they're like, oh, just kidding, right? And so you're like, okay, we'll go back again. We started our legislative session in February. And that is always a very busy time of the year for us at the state level. There's constant hearings and requests for information. We get questions from the Legislative Council Bureau, from elected officials, from the governor's office, and the turnaround time on that is really, really fast. Sometimes it's by the end of the day. Sometimes we've got a little bit more time on those. We lost our state superintendent in March, which was also, I'll note, in the middle of the in the state legislative session. I feel like I was about to say, here's looking at you, Clark County School District, but I'm going to stop picking on you. So, and then, at the end of the March, we were like, okay, closing out round 2 of the federal leaf, and then they were like, just kidding, on round 3 late liquidation, and we're like, wah! And again, that same process of analyses, where's our vulnerabilities, let's try to get everything processed that we can, the legal responses and media requests, and then eventually some type of status quo going back. Then we had a massive vacancy here in the grants management unit where we lost one of our GMU supervisors. And that impacted me personally because I had to step into that role, which made a lot of extra workload in terms of our ability to start looking at the Rev Zero subaward budgets. We have sort of a constant churn in programs directors and EPPs that are new that need some additional support in terms of established processes. By May and June, we were starting to get stacked up on some missed deadlines in the master grants timeline. Those that were May, that the deadlines were hit during March, April, May, February, March, April. Those got approved on time. And if you were to go back to look at the deadlines in the master grants timeline and equate those with the subawards and the approval deadlines, the vast majority of those, barring massive requirements for corrections, those for the most part got approved on time. But once we started getting into May and June, we had sort of some, what I'll talk about, some in terms of tolerance, windows of tolerance and design tolerance failures that started to pile up, and those are exponential for us. Then July 1st rolls around again, big rug pulled out from under us. We don't have GANs. I do want to flag though, the grant award notices that we did not receive on July 1st, and you saw this in memos that we got to post to ePage and send out via email. There were 109 subaward agreements that were impacted by the lack of a grant award notice that didn't come in as expected and as we usually receive those. 89 of them had already been approved, and some of them were approved as early as the end of April. It's like so I got to attach this memo and a comment to the history log of ePage for 89 subawards to be like, hey, you have an approved funding application in ePage. And just as a reminder, if we don't have the money from the feds, you also don't have the money, right? And anything you spend is at risk until we get the money from the feds. That's the way this works. And so in general, the ones that weren't approved by then, not all of them, not whole cloth, but the ones that maintained adherence to the master grants time and in those deadlines generally had been approved well in advance of that July 1 non-receipt of GANs. July also always starts our fiscal year closeout. We have statutory deadlines that kick that into progress. In August, we had a random revised grant award notice associated with GEAR Up. We were trying to figure out what that meant. There's a lot of trying to figure out what things mean this year on a regular and ongoing basis. It just depends what it's going to be that week or that day. And then literally that weekend, we had this cybersecurity attack. And that impacted all state agencies, but specifically here at the department, you may not know, there were days that we didn't have access to our devices at all. So Microsoft, we're all on the Microsoft suite. When we go to sign into our devices, it uses cookies and tokens so that you don't have to do a re-authentication every time you sign in. The example they were using here in the department was like you have a hall pass that has a number of punches and you can only punch your card so many times and then the hall pass expires and you have to like go get a new hall pass. But you don't know how many punches were already punched on your card when the re-authentication, when everything went down. And so like every time you go to sign in, you're like holding your breath to try to figure out if your hall pass is going to expire or not. When that happened on August 24th, was over that weekend, we have statutorily required payments that have to go to school districts. Does anybody have any idea how much those, so that's through the pupil-centered funding plan. Fortunately, that was not a state special education fund payment month. Those go out on a quarterly basis. But we also have the salary incentive maintenance payments, which are not a ton of funding that go out every month. Anybody want to guess in the chat how much money we send out every month through the pupil-centered funding plan? to school districts and charter schools. This is the state education fund, foundational formula funding. That is the state's contribution to public education in Nevada. This is when you read the news, my team does not get to guess, by the way, because we've talked about this. You guys have to stay silent. That's $2 million. That's real cute. I think you need maybe a couple more digits. 250,000, Taylor, that's darling. I think you needed some letters behind that. Billions is close, Sam. Patrick Smora, you were not also allowed to guess. Patrick Smora is in Celeste unit. Yeah, Patrick Smora is precisely accurate. If you're looking at the chat, $474 million by the first, yeah, technically not. I know, Patrick, I should have been more explicit in that. Thanks, Zach Kahn. He's trying to use Price is Right rules. Yeah. $474 million goes out to our 17 school districts and our roughly, 50, 76, 58-ish charter academies that are in the state of Nevada every month on the first of the month by statutory requirement. And it's even better than that. Those don't go in a lump sum payment. Patrick Smora, since you're on a roll, how many categories of payments go out up to combine into that amount? So we have adjusted base, we have PC, okay, I don't know, it's a lot. That's a cop out. We have adjusted base, we have PCFP, EL, at risk, gate, local sped, transportation, and food. So a school district could get 7 amounts that roll into their total PCFP payment, and they have to get keyed in separately. So up to 7 times 76 LEAs keyed in separate amounts every single month. It's a lot of work. And this, when the cybersecurity attack happened, it was a lot of work to make sure those could get through. When everything was broken, and the first thing they had to try to patch was those, because those are statutory payments that had to get out, and also that pays many of your salaries, by the way. Not necessarily grant funded staff, but a lot of people, keeps your lights on, and etc. We wanted to make sure that happened. People were ready to write checks if that didn't go through like it was supposed to. So there was a lot of scrambling to make those. So those happened, and massive kudos to our fiscal operations staff, to Megan, to Melissa Willis, our state education fund manager, to all the team at Governor's Finance Office that made that happen. Oh, by the way, we had literal buildings on fire in August. This is across the street. If you've ever been to the Department of Education building here in Carson, to the south of us, there were 5 homes that were previously children's homes. They've been impounded. The state is building some administrative buildings there. So they'd cleaned them all up. The firefighters in the area recognized an incredible opportunity to train on smoke mitigation. I don't know that they achieved that goal. They burned one down every day of the week that week, except that on Tuesday they weren't able to do Tuesday, so they burned 2 on Wednesday. And in the middle of the morning on Wednesday, we're rushing around trying to find all of our smoke filters that we use during wildfire season here. And so on Friday, we threw a s'mores party, because when life gives you dumpster fires, you make s'mores. So then in September, we finally got access to many of our systems. It was still an ongoing thing. We rushed to finish out the state fiscal year because, oh, by the way, Perkins and Aflin moved from USAID to the Department of Labor. We had to do some things on that to make sure we could still get our money. And then we had a planned upgrade to the state payment processing system. We were trying to get all of your RFRs processed before the cutoff This means that we are going to have an entirely timekeeping system for all state employees. We were exception reporting. Now we're positive reporting. We're not positive what that means for us, by the way. And then the federal government shut down on October 1st. So that's been our year in review, and I'm certain that you guys have had a very similar year of review. And so I wanted to talk about tolerance. I mentioned it a minute ago. In engineering, I got a kid who's a mechanical engineer. You design for the conditions under the expected circumstances. He happens to be an aerospace engineer, and he's designing a micrometeoroid orbital debris shield and for life habitats in space, for humans to live in space. So Christina, you must not have made it before the deadline on that, but I'll get to it in a minute. Thank you for that. So space dust kills. Tiny pieces of space dust and space rock can puncture massive, space and apparatus and blow up the whole thing because of the velocity that happens for tiny particles in space. And so when you design anything in engineering, you have to build in tolerance levels based on the conditions. So bridges, those of us that may recall the massive earthquake that happened in the Bay Area in 1989 and parts of the Bay Bridge collapsed. And so when you build a bridge, inflatable life habitat system, the bridge that was built out here on 580 that collapsed twice as they were building it, all of us, Nevada's riddled with fault lines for earthquakes. Everything that is built in Nevada is supposed to meet certain codes and standards for earthquakes, for movement from that. The only time you would have zero tolerance built in to anything is if the designer, the engineer, did not do their job, or if they assumed that there was zero risk involved. If they were super aggressive in their design and said that that there were no conditions under which the designer that thing was going to be at risk. So building codes or other types of codes to provide the absolute minimum standard. What's called factors of safety are the higher standard, and those consider life and limb, and they design for what are called 100-year events. If you have multiple 100-year events though in a row, you will have failures. And there are certain things you cannot design for, or you won't design for because it's going to cost too much money, right? So something like a tornado, right? We see our friends in the Midwest and other parts of the country, the South, Tornado Alley, and other places where you cannot costly or efficiently build a building, a home that can withstand, in most cases, a tornado going over the top of it. It would not be cost efficient to do so. So you do the best you can to mitigate risk, and then you put in a basement. You tell the people to go in the hole in the ground because that's your best chance of survival, but the building will fail. One of the things I've been thinking about is that people have windows of tolerance too. And when we're in a trauma, we talked about this in January, when we're in a trauma or a crisis response, one of the things we do is we default to old habits and patterns of behavior. And lately, the last couple months, it's felt like to me a little bit like COVID. Myself personally, people in the agency, Megan and I, and Ben and Deb and I have been talking about this a little bit lately. Like, we see people that we work with in and out of the department, internal partners, external partners, like, they've been super successful at this in the past, and we don't understand what's changed, what's different. And I think it's for me at least, a totally normal response to stress and trauma. A lot of times when we're under crisis, we're under stress, a very human response is to go back to what we know, old habits or patterns of behavior. And so thinking about, it feels a little to me, and I don't want to like assume that it's the same for you, but it feels a little to me like COVID, but in a different way, where COVID was like a long, steady, and somewhat known threat. If that, like, we're dealing with a pandemic. And I think after the initial sort of panic, it was, all right, we're sort of in it for the long haul. And it also required us to act, but in new ways, and to kind of innovate, right? So there was a response that it generated that was action driven and, in a weird way, creative, right? It required some action, it required some innovation, doing something different. This is, to me, a little different because it feels like we're in like constant DEFCON, threat levels, where um, we don't know when it's going to come. At least this is me again. The next threat. But at this point in the calendar year, I'm like, it's what's today? Like, which rug is going to get pulled out from under us today in terms of education or funding, or what might happen. And so one of the things we know about, when I was working in the school district as a school social worker, I worked with kids and families who were sort of in constant cortisol overload, kids who were in constant trauma response, and that became their default operating system, where they were just always up in cortisol response modes and never got to reset to baseline. And fight, flight, or freeze. And sometimes that freeze, that perception of threat, can lead to this sort of freeze where we are locked down because it feels not safe to act. Or we are locked down and we do the things that we defaulted to in sort of old habits, or things that that are familiar and they're safe because they are familiar. And so I was going to tell you, this is a funny little story. My not so awesome response to losing access to my state issued device during the great cybersecurity event of 2025. So we were going through this where every day, I think Vicki Hafner, my administrative assistant, had, I think, she's the winner chicken dinner, in the worst way possible, to having the longest lockout of any person in the Department of Education from not being able to access her device, which was terrible. There's only so many files you can go through. There are only so many things you can clean in the building. But we were physically frequently not able to even get into our laptops. And then there were chunks of days where we couldn't get into our network, our G drives and our networks. We couldn't get into our email in some cases. And we were doing things like, we had reset all of the settings, the sleep settings, so that, like, it was never supposed to I was never physically closing my laptop. I would take it home with it was open. I would plug it in, and I was like keeping it on life support all the time. And I would talk to it like, come on, we got this today. I came into work one day, I had plugged it in, successfully opened it up, and I went to check on a few things and check on my team, and I came back and it had um, and essentially my hall pass expired, and I didn't realize that the hall pass expired. So I went to log in and I was like, oh, my password's not working. That's weird. And the cycle of grief and denial that I just went through was incredible. I I I was like, typed it in again, and I was like, my password's not working. And then I was typing, I was like, my password's not working. And then there were Joseph and Vicky yelled from the, yeah, you're locked. You're probably locked out. And I was like, I'm not locked out. I can't be locked out. And I went in this, and then I went to disbelief, shock, full shock. I went and sat in my car, and I was just like locked. It was the craziest thing. You guys, I'm so good under pressure most of the time. Like, I'm not that panicked. I have helped kids through all the broken bones. We had a spiral fracture on the football field. I've assessed every kid for a concussion. Like, I've done all the things. I can handle the things. I was in my car, like, fully frozen. And then I was like, I can't, like, sit here frozen. I have a team to lead. I have to put on my big girl pants and go pretend to know what I'm doing. And I came in the building, and instead of pretending to know what I'm doing, there's a stuffed chair right next to Joseph's desk, and I laid on it upside down. My back was on the part where I should have been sitting. My feet were up there, and I was like, I can't do this. I had a full trauma response, full on trauma response. And then I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. What can you do? What do you got? And I had to like reestablish the connection between my body and my brain that I was safe. You're safe. I'm seriously coaching myself through like safety talk, like I would do with my students when they were in a trauma response. Don't punch a wall. Don't flip a desk. You're going to be okay. Don't crawl under the desk and, cry. So this was like my not so awesome moment. And and it's been it's been one of those. I'm certain every single one of you has a simple or a similar story that you can likely uh, relate to. My team can attest to that. I think they were very gracious with. They were like, "Wow, Amber's gone fully around the bend." Although I think that they probably recognized that, acknowledged that a long time ago. Um, but we support each other through those moments, and um, it was rough. But the great thing is that as hard as this year has been, get up every morning and make an active choice to get out of bed, and I come to work and I get to walk down my hallway with my team, and I look at the amazing people I get to work with. I usually start these meetings with gratitude to my team, and I chose not to today because I wanted to do it in this slide and in this moment in the presentation. I look at Nancy and Andrew and Cheryl and Kathleen and Brittany and Sharon and Melissa and Philip and especially Deb and Ben and Vicky, Joseph and Megan. And I go, man, I'm so lucky. So blessed I get to work with these amazing people. And then I walk down the hall and I see amazing directors and amazing EPPs. May not know this. I'm working on a dissertation and all this fun. The university basically was like, hey, girl, we're going to fire you as a student if you don't finish this thing. You're throwing our data. You're making us look bad. Dr. Trent Smith I called him yesterday, my emotional support doctor. His office is right by the door where I take my emotional support animal, my dog, out to go to the bathroom, and he's become my emotional support doctor. Where I stop and be like, Dr. Smith, and he's so encouraging. He's like, you can do it, and there are so many amazing people in this building who have also made the active choice every day to get out of bed and come to work and fight the fight and do the good things. And I'm grateful for all of them, the people that I get to share this building and this time and this space with. So just wondering, and then I look in this room, we got 170 people that showed up, and a bunch are from the agency and a bunch are not. And you guys are in the thick of it like we are in terms of this daily yo-yo of trauma response and stress when it comes to the funding. I know we've got teachers in the classroom fighting, those fights and dealing with the kids who like to bite each other because they're wild animals that didn't get to go to pre-K or those kinds of things, and I appreciate them as well. But I'm wondering why do you do what you do? And sometimes I could use a little inspiration. If you don't mind putting something in the chat, if you're willing to do that, I'll share that out. If you're willing to, I won't put names with it, but when I attach and yes, Kim, I will be putting the deck out, the recording we're working on. Vicky's working on getting everything posted online. I'll put those quotes so that we can have those shared sort of inspirations. If you don't mind, put something in the chat. If you feel like coming off of mute, what is it that keeps you showing up every day? Why do you do what you do? Or if you want to send me an email or a text message later that tells us why is it that you keep showing up? And sometimes it's okay to be like, I got to pay my rent. I'm retiring soon. That's okay. We talked about it. One of our analysts is an amazing crafter. She's like, I got an addiction. We're like, we support you in that addiction because you make amazing crafts for us. If not, I don't, she didn't use addiction. Might have been obsession, but either way, we appreciate the gift. It's helpful to remember why we do the work that we do because I don't think, thanks Karen, it's your way of helping kids. Karen and I have cried a lot together. And I know when Karen says that, she means that. I think collectively, in some way, we believe in some way that the work we do will lead to a better future in some small way. We might have kids of our own, grandkids, nieces, nephews, kids in the neighborhood. Janice, thanks. Making an impact is important. Living a life of value and inspiring or helping others is meaningful. I love education and I want to see this opportunity blossom into more. I'm in an environment that respects me and that means more than any dollar. Well, that's good because we're not paying you enough. I know that for sure. Yeah. I enjoy what I do and my team, Shauna. That's great. And the money is needed for bills, of course, right? I don't know of any single human needs theory, any of them, Maslow, Adler, any of those that doesn't incorporate some type of meaningful work into the what drives humans. Julie, at the end of the day, we are supporting pre-K children and families throughout Nevada, through Nevada Ready. Yeah, and the work that United Way does in supporting those and the importance of pre-K education is really vital. Um, Absolutely vital in terms of future success, not just in education, but in life. The metrics, the data is super clear on that. There are people depending on us, all doing what needs to be done. Yeah, that's part of the social contract, right? I do what I do, you do what you do. We each find our place, our row to hoe, and we do that piece of it. And I do my part in this place where I've chosen to serve, and you do your part in your place where you've chosen to serve, and together we make it all work together. So, Patrice, the children and families that do not have a voice at the table. We support them in helping to educate and support their children. Thanks, Patrice. That's beautiful. Anyone can chime in here. This is free, open to NDE staff as well, and anything you want to add to it, I'll keep taking those throughout the meeting. I appreciate those because I could certainly use some inspiration some days. I think a lot of times it's easy to remember the hard days and the hard stuff that we deal with because that's what slaps us in the face all day long. But sometimes it's nice to have a reminder of the positives. So, but anything that thanks, Zach. I'm here because it's better than where I was, and it will be better where I am going. That's true. And Zach, I'm super proud of Zach. He's been doing a lot of work to move himself forward. Zach is in the MPA program, the Masters of Public Administration, and he's been working really hard. Zach's my little mentee. I might have strong-armed him. Bully is a little strong word, but I might have encouraged him firmly to enroll in the MPA program. All right, so on to the content. So as I was talking about do anybody have any questions or comments they want to contribute before? That was sort of just a debrief going over setting the stage. If anybody wants to chime in, and like I said, you can keep putting in the chat. And I will get to that. I'll go back up to your question, Christina, when I get up there. But I think that we might, when I get to that point, I think we will probably cover it here in a second. Oh, thanks, Kayla. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know if it's humbling. I don't know. We have a choice at this point, right? I think we've all been humbled. I don't know that anything beyond that is not going to be productive at this point in time. But thank you. I appreciate that. So going back to, the concept of engineering and designing, and building in for tolerances. I'll just provide, these are slides from January's meeting, the quarterly subrecipient meeting, and these kind of just get updated and upcycled on a regular basis. So this is just a reminder about why we have the master grants timeline. We've committed to doing this. I believe really firmly. I have strong feelings about honoring commitments. I liked somebody put this in the chat earlier. We've made commitments. Anna's comment earlier in the chat. People are depending on us, We've made commitments, and so the department made a commitment to all of you and to each other that we would provide a master grants timeline. And the reason that we did that is that to engineer the rollout of 310 subawards over 105 business days, which is a massive undertaking for an agency that is there. We had an efficiency assessment done earlier this calendar year that basically said we're staffed at about a third of what we should be compared to other state education agencies. So they took 6 other state education agencies, Tennessee, Missouri, I think Florida was even one of those. I'd have to, don't quote me on that one. It's been a minute and a lot of things have happened, and I am 50 and my brain is not working like it used to be. And recalling how many, but there were a bunch of other states that they compared demographically and funding wise and structurally to us, and said compared to other states, the Nevada Department of Education is staffed at about a third of what it should be in order to successfully support its local education agencies, its school districts, and its charter schools. And so to try to get 310 subawards out in 105 business days is kind of stupid, frankly. It's a ridiculous undertaking. But our best chance at doing that is through this sort of engineered master grants timeline. And when we build the master grants timeline, we actually do build in a lot of tolerances. For example, one of the things you see on that is an allocation memo. So our programs teams provide to the grants management unit and the student investment division a memo. It's for internal audit trail purposes that says, and coordination and communication that says, from this funding stream, which is associated with this job number and comes out of this budget account and category, that's internal information to us. So at the state system, it's this budget account and this category in the state's banking system. These are the entities we're passing money through at this amount. And anytime there's a change to that amount, up or down, we get another memo that's a reallocation memo. It just tracks for audit trail purposes when and why we made changes. We build in the master grants timeline a week for that. We don't need a week. We've already built the funding application and e-page long before that because we've also engineered that process. And so generally, once we get an allocation memo from the programs team and it's gone through the process of they've created it, their directors reviewed it, their deputies reviewed it, it comes to us. We have a process where we go through and the analyst reviews it to make sure all the information is correct. Comes to me, I look at it, and then we have Megan, the deputy of the student investment division, sign it. We give it to the e-page folks in our unit, our e-page administrator in the grants management unit, and the allocations get uploaded. We can do it in like 5 minutes because we're usually ready for it, as long as ever the information is correct on the allocation memo. But we build in a week of tolerance on the off chance the information is not correct, because sometimes it's not. Or on the off chance that there are other things going on in the agency where we don't get the allocation memo on time, because that's more often than not a challenge. Or there's other dependencies that have happened or other things that have happened that means that we're not getting it on time. Not always the programs team's fault, recognizing, right? So we do build in a lot of tolerances in the plan, in the master grants timeline. And we start this process in December to try to get from all of our programmatic teams that manage grants these dates. And we say, okay, you're going to let your subrecipients have X amount of time to build their budgets, and then we're going to go through this simultaneous review process, which I know Lauren asked about, and we're going to look at those resources in a minute. And if we make all these deadlines, we've got these tolerances, and we should be able to get this approved by this date. The problem is this is engineered with tolerances, but there are 310 of them. And if 20 of them miss their deadline, or 50 of them miss their deadline, or 75 of them miss their deadline, there are declining impacts, ripple effects that aren't linear, they're exponential. They're ripples, not just a bump in a line. And so when we look at what, I'm going to stop sharing because I'm going to switch to my oops. Web page. So when we look at really what happened in 2026, that's the biggest impact in terms of the process. We had a lot of missed deadlines that caused this sort of ripple effect. Now, when I'm going to show you here. Oh, come on, mouse. What we built, this is a split screen. So I've got two web pages open and I know it's tiny. So you're not meant to like really focus on the details here. This is just to give you an overview of what we use here in our grants management unit. On the right-hand side, which is telling you is too small for you to see, which I can appreciate. This is the forward-facing view. I can't give you guys access because you're not on our department Smartsheet license, but this is internal to the agency where we have a sort of forward-facing view of the progress of our subaward budgets as they move from the grants analyst to the GMU supervisors to my two queues, the pre-award assessment queue, and the deputy superintendent. And this snip of the slide down on the bottom on the right-hand side, that's the subaward budget approval process. That should look really familiar to you guys at this point, right? This is a process of once you've submitted your budget to us, this is how it goes through the required steps at the department level that it has to go through by federal and state regulations and policy requirements in order for us to be able to get it across the goal line. What this dashboard on the right-hand side is a forward-facing representation of is our planner, our Smartsheet planner on the back-end side here. I'm going to collapse this column here, and I'm just going to scroll slowly so that you don't get motion sick of what we've going on right now currently. I have no filters applied. And actually what I want to show you, I'm going to make this one bigger, full screen, so you can kind of see. I'm going to start scrolling all the cards. In fact, I did this the other day. Let's see what happens. Let's see. There's so many cards. Every card represents a subaward budget. That we are moving from one queue, one line, one action step to another from left to right as we go through this process, right? Anybody have any guesses? Go ahead and put them in the, I kind of burned you a little bit. Any guesses of, thanks, Pam. How many, so I'm going to ask you for the right answer in a second, Ben Johnson, putting you on notice. So go ahead and look at our back end data for me real quick. How many subrecipient entities does NDE pass money through to? And how many funding applications, grants, subaward agreements, how many subaward agreements do we have that are active or that we're paying RFRs on right now? Any guesses? First of all, how many subrecipient? 86 and 321. Dirk, I feel like you might have looked at ePage recently. I don't know, that's weird. Those are really specific guesses. Anyone else? I don't know if he's right or not, by the way. Ben's going to have to tell us the answer. But 321 is not right. 100 and 500. So subrecipients 100, Lisa's guessing, and 500 on. So I'll just give you a little bit of information to help you in your guesses in terms of subaward agreements. I told you that we have 310 that have to get approved-ish by July 1st. That's phase one. Those are the funding applications that have to get, that we try to get in place because they start on July 1. That's phase 1 of the new federal fiscal year, or of the new fiscal year. We have phase 2, or those funding applications that don't start until October 1st or August, because Gear Up is weird, right? So school-based mental health services, trauma-informed services. We have rando ones like Stop School Violence, and then we've got NYCP. We've got also state special education, Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and the SPDIGs, and the competitive components or the special projects components of those. We've got, and those are just FY26. So remember, we stopped putting the carry forward dollars. So those are the new ones with the new cans of funding. We still have versions of most of those from FY25 that have 15 more months of funding, which we're very glad for when we didn't have GANs come through on July 1st. So we have FY25 versions of most of those. And we had 3 more months of funding on FY24 versions of those. And we still have 2 subawards from FY23, 2 grant programs from FY23. Anyone want to amend their guesses? Funding applications that we're still, because this planner I just showed you, that's just FY26, by the way. I was lying to you a little bit. Not lying. I was only showing you our capacity to put a new project, a new tool in place. But I have a separate planner for FY23, FY24, and FY25. Ben, are you ready to try to give us some answers? Ballparks, doesn't have to be exacts. I put Ben on the spot. I didn't tell him I was going to do that because I was having IT issues.
Yeah, no worries. So currently, and this doesn't include all of the FY24 awards that just ended, I have 504 currently active awards, and we have 120 subrecipients in ePage total.
Yeah. So if we took the FY24s, which we're going to have every title 1A, 2A, 4A, 3s, 1Ds. We have BSCAs that are still in 23, AB 495s that are still in 23. So we're
a couple of paper awards.
Some papers from ARPA, so MC3 and school-based mental health workers. We're at least at 1,000 subaward agreements. And we've got 120 subrecipient entities that we work with. Organizations, all of you. Every one of my grants analysts, go ahead and put your hand up like you're raising your hand. So go to the top and raise your hand. See the raise option? Not everybody's in, I don't think, today. So here we go. Keep going. I'm sorry, Ben and Deb, you too. So you guys look at the top bar. What does that say? People. How many people have their hand raised? Thanks, Jamie. Ten. Yeah, thanks. Do the math. It's gnarly, right? So, and then, thanks guys. You can put your hands down. High fives for all, by the way. High fives for all. I promise we are doing the very best that we can, and I know you guys are too, and we appreciate, like, we do have really good systems in place. We've got a planner, it works well. We've got really good instructions, it works well. They work well. We also have really such good people that a bunch of them are being promoted, which we want to celebrate. And so we currently have 2 vacancies. Ben was promoted to fill that GMU supervisor position, which I appreciate immensely. He but that left a vacancy. We had another analyst that was promoted out of the agency. Thanks, Kayla. We have a couple of internal promotions that are on tap soon, another expected external promotion. So just as a heads up, we're looking at probably a 55% vacancy rate within the next several weeks. And one of the things that happened as a result of the cybersecurity event is HR got significantly behind. And so, yeah, I do need a bigger boat. I need I'm not a boat person, but maybe we could probably use the Carnival cruise line. Maybe the Disney version would be fine. I'd be okay with that. And so, maybe the one that comes with free drinks too. Um, but Nancy, you can give me a thumbs up. Are you okay if I announce yours as well? Nancy Sanchez. On the camera, you okay if I announce yours? Your promotion? I can't see your face. Okay. Nancy is being promoted to our Office of Fiscal Operations as a budget analyst. They came to me and they're like, Nancy applied, and I was like, she's great. And I hate you for taking her. But that's going to leave us a hole in our e-page administrator role. But I was like, um, I'm so proud of my team. That's part of my job as a supervisor, but we're going to need a little extra grace as well. And we're going to fill those as fast as we can. We had a recruitment that opened literally the Friday before the cybersecurity event. And we just got a list assigned yesterday, and we're rocking through that as fast as we can. So we're gonna go as fast as we can. We have really good systems in place, but as I said, when the tolerances aren't met, when we have multiple 100-year events in a row, when the deadlines aren't met, I can't control for those. And so we're going to keep doing the best we can. Now, as a reminder, oh, that is not the right file. Let's go to, here it is. As a reminder, we've given you some resources going back to what happens when people are in crisis and they forget what they know. We gave you this year a chart of accounts cheat sheet. The cheat sheet's important. I've met with a few of you to be like, hey, use the textbook. This is an open book test, but the cheat sheet's really helpful and important. And I'm going All right, can you hear me now? Ah, Brittany says yes. Okay, now I get to try to drive a different. Thank you for your patience. Let's try. All right. Thank you. It's 2025, you guys. All right. Now I get to drive a young person's eyes and someone else's mouse. So I was trying to show you the cheat sheet. I'll send that to you. I'll give you that. Thank you, Ben, for letting me co-opt your desk and your workspace. And now look at the beautiful mountains I'm in now. I'll send you the cheat sheet. Use the cheat sheet as the textbook, and use the words like you did when you were in school, where you use the words when you thought, uh, if I use the words the teacher gave me in the prompt, I will likely get a better score, a better grade. When you restated the question, when you restated the prompt in your first paragraph of your hamburger essay. So we've said that we will not ask you to correct something that was that we didn't identify as a correction in a prior revision of your budget. This is why we spend so much time on Rev Zero. This is really important, especially for school districts and our charter schools, because the information that you include as you code that your budgets for your grants gets aggregated up and reported in your state NRS 3D73A report and in your federal reporting that Jamie and I, Jamie Webster Frederick, submit to the feds, the F33 report and the NPEFs, the National Public Education Finance Survey. Those values, that data informs our entitlement allocations, Title I, et cetera. And so that data really needs to be accurate and it needs to be coded accurately, because then Jamie and I work really hard to make sure that that data and that information is reported accurately to the feds. We are in an incremental action plan on the school level finance survey, which takes the same data, but instead of at the district level, which is the F33 report, or the state level, which is the NPEFs report, it's at the school level. And so we're working on implementing that same level of specificity and reporting at the school site level once we get that information into an online electronic version, which we're in the middle of the contract proposal process for here at the state level. So we're not going to roll that out until we have a much better system to support all of you in that for at our district and charter level. And so that's why we invest so much time at the Rev Zero level, is so that the rest of the fiscal year, because as soon as we get through all these, we're going to start up for the master grants timeline and the process for FY27, and we start the reporting cycle. And so that's why we invest so much time. But any change you make on any revision from a prior change, whether that's the budget details, the quantity or the price per unit, the total amount you requested, or, and especially, information in the budget narrative. So even though it was previously approved, you add a line, you add an item that was previously said, we're buying supplies and these in under 610, they're general supplies, these kinds of things. And then you throw a MacBook in there, that's no longer general supplies. This is now an IT supply. And we're going to have to ask you to change it, right? So keep that in mind. Common issues we've been seeing, benefits, please, 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 for the love of God and all that is holy, do not put math in the benefits more than you have to. Or submit us your benefit cost rate schedule or provide the basic rate, a percentage, and the salary. And if you can, tie those line item single to each previous salary line, that would be ideal, so that we're not doing 27 calculations based on that, because the chances are there will be a fat finger someplace in that math within your budget narrative in that Excel file. In general, don't put math in the narrative unless it's absolutely necessary. Use the budget details. That's why the good Lord gave you the math in the ePage system. So the quantity and the per unit will calculate it for you. The exception to those are, of course, things like supplies or in the travel. And in those cases, we don't require the per unit cost. We say, give us an estimate. The budget is a planning tool. So give us an estimate of what you're going to spend on supplies. Give us an estimate on the GSA rates. But for those things on supplies, we ask you to give us the no single item is going to cost more than $9.99 so that we know you intentionally selected that object code of 610 or 650 or 654, or that for travel that you will use the GSA rates at the time of travel. Then we don't need you to give us the estimated costs because we know you've acknowledged that you understand that you have to use the GSA rates when the travel occurs. Please don't give us an essay in your grant narrative. The more information you include, the more chances there are that we're going to be trying to read the tea leaves in terms of what it is you're trying to do with the narrative. The programs teams have information they have to collect. Not all of it needs to go in a budget narrative. The budget is a fiscal tool. And so if you're going to put a bunch of information in the narrative, please make sure that that is the right place for it to go. Again, and that is required information. If you're going to be listing out a lot of things that this expenditure is expected to do, we see this a lot in positions. This position is going to support instruction and family engagement and collect data and do all these things. Just tell us the primary function, as in 51% of their time they're going to do this, so that we know why you picked the function code, or we can help you find the correct function code. Question everything. So this is again going back to when we're in a crisis response, we go back to what we think we know. If you can't point to one of our resources, the budget preparation guidelines document, the cheat sheet that says you have to do it, shoot us an email and say, do I have to do this? Because more than likely it's something that says, probably not. We didn't ask for the math. We didn't ask you to say these things. But if it says you do, if it says under supplies, you have to give us examples, we're going to say, you have to give us examples. Because we don't know if you meant to pick an IT supply or a non-IT supply. If it says you have to give us the statement because you're asking for more than $1,000 worth of supplies, we have to have the statement to clarify that you're purchasing low dollar supplies. If it's one of the things we've seen a lot lately is the useful life of IT supplies. A monitor, a keyboard. Are you really expecting to throw that out after a year? Or is that something your organization is likely asking you or expecting you to take good enough care of that you're hoping that it will last more than a year? And in that case, we're going to ask you to take it out of 654, even though it probably costs less than $1,000, and put it in 652 because the useful life should be more than a year. This is important because it does get captured in reporting. Travelers who are the primary attendees. Some of you, SPCSA has been doing such a good job of this with the instructional staff. Attendees are primarily instructional staff. Fantastic. That tells us everything we need to know about the function code for the travelers or the attendees at a conference. Spell out acronyms. There are 120 organizations we work with. You guys don't all call each other the roles of your staff the same thing. It's crazy. So tell us what that means when you use an acronym. We're really good at Googling some things, but it does take time when we have to Google the things. I speak educationese for the most part, but it's been a minute since I've been in a district, and the longer it is and the more things that innovate, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that is anymore. Peer review, think about it. Like have somebody look at it and say, does this make sense? Is somebody who doesn't come from our district going to be able to understand what this means? Those are some things that I think would be a good idea before you send it over to us, because every time we have leaves or
And Amber?
from us.
Okay.
Yes. Who was that?
Melissa, but I can hear you now again.
All right. Any questions from you guys? Recognizing we're 5 minutes over and we've lost roughly 25 minutes. I'll try to go up to your question, Christina, really quick. We have some updates. This is a summary of an email that went out to CFOs and I believe superintendents recently. This will be on the slide deck that will get shared on the federal funding from the government shutdown. We have been able to successfully submit draws on our federal funding and bring those dollars into the state. As soon as our payment system comes back online on Monday, we'll be able to claim those dollars. They're in the state's account. We just can't go claim them right now. Anything that you hear about reductions in force or layoffs, I would wait until you see that officially. Those are really hard to track. It's a very much an active and moving target. Let me scroll back up really quickly. I might just have to answer your question from the SPCSA offline. I can't figure out your mouse pen. Really quickly, I'll send this out. I'll actually do a poll about the indirect cost rates. We can do that in November or December. But November, we are going to do a TA session on the 387, 388A report because those dates, in case you weren't tracking, did get moved back in terms of the deadlines. So Ben, can you help me find how to get my mouse down to the chat down here?
It's just all the way to the left.
There we go. Thank you. Deb, can you still hear me? Am I back again? Deb?
I can hear you. Same room, I know I'm back.
Oh,
Yeah,
Brittany?
it's coming through.
you can hear me? Okay, I can see Brittany. All right, as I'm scrolling up, any last minute questions? Maintenance of effort for SPED and Title 1A. I will have to get you that maintenance of effort is done in my office. We are working on that for FY24, I believe. SPED is done in the Office of Comprehensive Student Supports, the office formerly known as Office of Inclusive Education. FY24 is in progress. It has to be done for a single audit. There will also be an update about the single audits coming out. Office of Management Budget pulled the compliance supplemental with the government shutdown and has still not been updated yet. 27 calendar comes out in January, Heather. Hannah, what we are going to do on the RFRs, we're trying to get those recordings posted on our website. But I can send you the PowerPoint, the slide deck. In the meantime, if you send us an email, the grants info, let me go back to that. Oh boy. You can send us an email. Any questions you have can go to grants info and we can send you the PowerPoints of those. By SB 500 reported on the state forum. Darla, I assume this is the hard to fill positions? Or are you asking about the state budget? You have to be more specific for me, Darla. Oh, category for okay, so the salary incentives maintenance will be under Fund 220, like it was on the 387, but that'll be part of the TA session that we do in November. I think it's
Okay.
November 5th. That just send me a separate email. It's not pertinent to this because it's not a grant anymore.
Okay, so it's not a grant anymore. That's what I was trying to figure out.
For FY26, yeah.
For FY26. Okay, I'm going to send you an email asking you a couple of questions on that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Since we are so far behind in receiving funds, we'll be allowed to submit combined RFRs July and August together. Or will they still need to be submitted separately? Yeah. Anybody who wasn't able to get caught up on their RFRs for various reasons and circumstances, yeah, we will accept your combined RFRs to get you caught up. We're not going to make you go month by month. And then once we get you caught up, we'll go month by month after that. For Jill's question in the chat. Afland Perkins, will e-page documents be updated to reflect the change of prime to Department of Labor? Sorry, Ben?
Yeah, I'll get that.
Yeah, we'll make that updated just shortly. Yep, no problem, Jill. All righty, you guys. Thanks for your patience with our IT stuff. I still haven't been able to leave the room in the Teams meeting in my actual device at my desk. We'll see if we can get that to happen so I can stop the recording. I'll send the PowerPoint to you. I'll send the cheat sheet. Use the words that are highlighted in bold on the cheat sheet, and I'll send that to you in the email as a reminder. Point us to your logic in the budget narrative so we know what you were thinking. We're pretty good at reading minds, but not that great. When it comes to the more words you put in it, it starts to get murky for us. So just remember, we work with 120 entities, and you guys all speak slightly different dialects. Some of them are really different languages entirely. So keep that in mind as well. Thanks for being awesome. We appreciate your partnership and all that you do to support kids and families. And have a fantastic rest of your week. Happy Nevada Day in 2 weeks. You should all celebrate. I'm not going to say to those who celebrate because you should all celebrate this great state that we live in. Be well.